Good afternoon. It is 1:30 in my watch and we get started, which I believe is not usual for Russia, but we will do it the Indian way. How many people here make product decisions? Are people who run their own startups or work in a larger product company and make product decisions? Actually, it'd be nice if you stand up, a little good after the lunch, right? Perfect. That's very good. Thank you. And I'm hoping most of you would have heard the term MVP. Okay, cool. So let's get started. I'm going to touch a little bit upon design thinking. How many people here are familiar with the term design thinking? Right? Design thinking has this flow where they start with basically talking about, I have a big learning or a big idea that I start with. From the big idea, I build a big prototype, and then from a big prototype, I come up with a big test. I validate that test. I have some insights or big learning from it, and then I improve my big idea. And I go through this process. The big problem with this approach, we figured out that the time for learning, basically to validate, is very long. The duration of the learning is very long. So the guys in the lean startup community who basically came up with slight tweak of that cycle, where what they did is they said, we have a big idea which is based on our passions, our inspirations and opportunity. So we have a big idea, we want to change the world, right? And then from there we put together a list of assumptions or hypotheses that we have on what our big idea is based on. And there are users and solution, both hypotheses in there. From that we identify what is our riskiest, what is the most, thing that I want to know right now, what is the most important thing I want to know right now, and we go to the riskiest assumptions. To validate our riskiest assumptions, we come up with a simple prototype which will only validate one assumption, not the whole big idea, right? Unlike the design thinking where they try and validate the whole idea, here we are only going to validate one specific thing. And then from there you come up with a focus test, you have a small learning but a critical learning, and that helps you tweak your idea. Right? This is what people talk about as the build, measure, learn cycle in the lean startup. Right? People are familiar with the build. You have an idea, you build something, you have some kind of a product. From that you come up with some kind of a measurement, and then you validate the data, you have some insights, and you tweak your idea. And you go through this as quickly as possible, right? That's the whole point about lean startup, is this should be as quick as possible. That's the bookish definition of what an MVP is, in case someone's not familiar with what an MVP is. A minimum viable product, right? A minimum viable product is a version of your product, a version of your new product or a new feature that you believe will give you validated learning, that will help you validate that big idea that you have, right? It is the fundamental reason for an MVP to exist is to validate your business hypothesis, whether this is a viable thing or not, right? That's why it's called the minimum viable product. One big problem I find with the term minimum viable product is that people think that they have to build some kind of a product to be able to validate it, right? And the rest of the talk, I'm going to hammer the point into you that you don't have to build anything to validate your hypothesis, right? That's what we call about hacking your MVPs. How do you come up with the MVP? You might be a non-tech person. You don't have to be a technical person who can write code, but you can be a technical person who want to validate your hypothesis. And I don't want to write code. I'm a lazy guy. I want to just earn money, right? Why go through all the problem of building something? So I'm going to talk about I'm going to give you a few examples, and then I'm going to deep dive into my own startup which I've been building for the last 2.5 years. And I'm going to talk about 8 pivots we made, 8 different directions we changed over the last 2.5 years, and I'm going to talk about how we did that based on hypothesis. But first I want to start with someone else's experience, right? Because it's always good to show someone else's experience before you talk about your experience.
So my name is Paul Howell. I'm going to talk about a specific technique that my startup has used to conduct really realistic, really effective user tests of our ideas. So about a year ago, we had an idea for a social purchase sharing app where you would stream out what you're buying to your friends and they would share back with you what they were buying, and it was going to be great, and it was going to be a social networking take on product reviews. And being a lean startup, we mocked it up, static prototypes, we got in front of a lot of people, and they said, you know, I'm not going to use it, but I can see how other people might use it. And then we heard that again and again, and we said, well, why wouldn't you use it? And they said, because I don't know which of my friends would actually use this. And it made sense. It's a social application, and if they don't see the real faces of their friends that they can emotionally connect with, they can't actually grok what it's going to be about. So I said, all right, we need to make this a more realistic test than what we've done. And we drilled down on the most important interaction on the site, which is when someone does a purchase and shares it on Facebook, and it appears in their friend's newsfeed. And we're interested, would people actually click? Would they care? So we thought about, how can we make this realistic? Do we have to build the whole thing, build this pretty serious sized app to do this, or can we fake it really well? We decided to try to fake it, and the technique we used was a Greasemonkey script. So if you're not familiar with Greasemonkey, it's just a simple little JavaScript that can change the way a website appears. So here's an Amazon product page. After I installed Greasemonkey, it now pops up every time I go there, a little yellow box that shows competitors' prices. So it's specific to one page, and it alters that page. So I went on rentacoder.com, described what I wanted. I found a guy in the Philippines who was willing to build our script for $40. We sent our $40 across the ocean. And a few days later, sure enough, back came the script. And it's pretty simple. There's the whole thing right there. You just drag that into Chrome or to Firefox, and it wakes up every time it gets on its target page. So every time we went to Facebook, it would wake up and it would run itself. So the next thing we do is our standard procedure. We post an ad on Craigslist, say we're running a social media focus group. We bring people in, say, what's your favorite social media site? And invariably they'd say Facebook. I'd say, great, why don't you log into Facebook? That's a great idea. And up would pop their newsfeed, and they're feeling totally in control. It seems very realistic. Their newsfeed pops up, and the Greasemonkey script runs, and it inserts fake content into their feed, and it's using their real friends' names and faces. So it's pixel perfect real. If we built the whole thing, it wouldn't have looked any different than that. And so then we sat back and said, well, are they going to notice this content that our app would normally insert into their feed? And sure enough, no prompting, they were like, wait a minute, my friend Michelle bought a Lady Gaga album, and my friend Charlie bought, an iPad, and they noticed, and they reacted very strongly. I hated it. This is how Facebook is going to hell. It used to be about friends, and now it's about commercial stuff. I remember back in the day, we would share poetry, and now I hate these ads. And we did it 50 times, and there were 3 people who liked it. So it was a very different reaction than when we did the initial prototypes. And it really wasn't that hard to do. It was a $40 script. So that's my main point. Don't think that you just have to do it with paper. You can do something better. So one thing to explain about Greasemonkey, it only works on the computer that you're testing on. So it's good for one-on-one. We couldn't really change Facebook for the whole world.
Anyway, you get the point. Right? That's what I'm going to do for the rest of my talk. Just have someone else talk for me. Right? This is what is referred to as a meta talk. I'm going to use my own technique to give the talk, where I'm not going to talk anything, let other people do my MVP for me. Right? Do you guys know about Zappos? Some people will know about Zappos. It was bought by Amazon a few years ago, a very, very big successful company. The founder of Zappos felt that the market was ready, where people will go online and buy shoes. Right? That was his hypothesis. And he wanted to validate that hypothesis. So he could go, build an inventory, build an online ordering system, do the whole thing, and then see if people are interested in buying shoes online. right? Instead what he did is he went to a local store, a shoe store nearby, took pictures of shoes, their sizes, and then put it on simple websites like Craigslist and things like that, which is very popular in the US, and then saw if people would order shoes online, right? And sure enough, people started ordering shoes, right? Brilliant. So he said, well, there is a lot of orders for shoes. He would go out, buy the shoes for full price, ship it to these guys, and one thing he realized during this experiment was people were not ordering one shoes. People were ordering 3 or 4 shoes. He said, that's weird. I thought people would buy one shoe, but people are buying so many shoes. And the next thing he realized was what people do is they order 3 or 4 shoes, they wear one, they like one, and they send back the rest of them. Right? So he had to tweak his model based on this learning that he had, which he would have not learned otherwise if he had built the whole thing and then realized that his pricing does not work. So this was his cheap experiment or MVP to figure out, what should be the model. Will people buy the shoes, and if they buy the shoes, what else is required to support this model so that it can be successful, right? It became a multi-million-dollar company. It got bought over by Amazon. But the first thing they did was a cheap, simple experiment, which was 0 lines of code, right? Let's look at another example which requires some physical stuff to be sent over to people, and how do you know if the market is ready for something like this? I'm going to play another video.
Hi, I'm Mike, founder of DollarShaveClub.com. What is DollarShaveClub.com? Well, for $1 a month, we send high-quality razors right to your door. Yeah, $1. Are the blades any good? No. Our blades are great. Each razor has stainless steel blades, an aloe vera lubricating strip, and a pivot head. It's so gentle a toddler could use it. And do you like spending $20 a month on brand name razors? 19 go to Roger Federer. I'm good at tennis.
And do you think your razor needs a vibrating handle, a flashlight, a back scratcher, and 10 blades? Your handsome-ass grandfather had 1 blade and polio. Looking good, Papa! Stop paying for shave tech you don't need. And stop forgetting to buy your blades every month. Alejandro and I are going to ship them right to you. We're not just selling razors, we're also making new jobs. Alejandro, what were you doing last month?
Not working.
What are you doing now?
Working.
I'm no Vanderbilt, but this train makes hay. So stop forgetting to buy your blades every month and start deciding where you're going to stack all those dollar bills I'm saving you. We are DollarShaveClub.com, and the party is on.
It almost looks like I'm a salesperson trying to sell the product. So do you know how much it costed him to make this video? The guy who is in the video is the founder of the company, right? Rented out a big warehouse to shoot the video. It's not his office, it's a rental place. Shot the video, costed him about $3,000 to do the whole thing, and put the video online. Within 3 days of putting the video online, right, the video went viral. It hit 1 million views, and they had lots of people going to DollarShaveClub.com and signing up. But there's actually nothing, it's just a sign-up page. Right? That's all was there. What was he trying to validate? If you see the video, what was he trying to validate in his video? There were 2 fundamental hypotheses that he wanted to validate. If I sell blades for $1, right, everybody else is selling for $19. And if I sell shaving blades for $1, will people buy it? Well, the obvious answer might be yes, but if you think a little bit more about it, while everyone is $19, that must be really good quality. This is $1, it must be dirt cheap, dirty, right? I'm not going to use a $1 shaving blade because it's not good. So inherently, we associate price with quality, right? So he wanted to see if that is going to kill his product. right? So if he launches something and if it is $1, people would discard it if it is cheap. So he wanted to validate how many people would sign up. The second thing he wanted to validate is people forget to buy blades. So if I were to ship blades to you, right, and there is a particular rate at which you consume shaving blades. It's not like this month I take 10 blades and next month I take 1 blade. There is a particular pattern at which I consume blades. So if we can basically ship it to you without you ever having to worry, will that be convenient? Will that appeal to people? Will they buy? So those were two main hypotheses, and then obviously he made it entertaining and funny and hilarious and all of that stuff. He also had the Lean Startup book in the video to show that this is essentially a Lean Startup idea, which is his MVP, his minimum viable product for validating if people would go to Dollar Shave Club and sign up for blades. Right? Again, these are examples which went very successful and they're very good. I tried something similar. So I run the Agile India conference, and one of the things we wanted to do was organize a job fair at the conference. And we wanted to know what is the kind of, how many people will sign up for the job fair, how many companies will participate in the job fair. So basically created a Google form and saw how many people sign up, saw the response. And it turned out that lots of people were interested. After that, went and built a site where people would sign up. So basically tried to test out the idea by spending 5 minutes on it, by just creating a form and then seeing how many people would sign up, and after that basically investing in the actual website and the idea of how we were going to run all of these things. Lots of different examples, but before we get into anything interesting, time for a commercial break, right? So my name is Naresh Jain. I live in Mumbai. I don't act in Bollywood. Do you guys know what Bollywood is? Yeah. I was a partner at a company called Industrial Logic. We built e-learning for programmers. We help them learn technical practices. Google said this was a game changer. Every employee at Google went through this. After that, I started another company called Adventure Labs, where we build educational apps for kids for mental development. There's a whole bunch of apps that we have built, but those are all our MVPs. None of that is actually real. It's all fake stuff. I built something called Advanced Search, which allows you to search for content inside Facebook and a bunch of other crap stuff. I started a bunch of conferences. So I started the Agile movement in India in 2004. We've been running conferences for 10 years. I've run a bunch of other conferences. Because I run a lot of conferences, I also built something for conference management. Again, complete MVP style. Every year we add something new. These are a bunch of companies that I've worked as either as an employee or as a consultant. So that's a quick background about myself, why I'm here and why I'm going to be talking about my experience. So perfect timing. We are almost 20 minutes into this talk. So I'm going to talk now mostly about MVPs that we ran at my company, and I'm going to hopefully give you some ideas of what you can do to try and experiment on your products. Alright, so Adventure Labs was about kind of really helping kids with overall brain development. We saw things like these. I believe stuff like this happens even here in Russia, where kids participate in these mental arithmetic competitions where as you can read, 15 triple-digit numbers are displayed in 2 seconds, and people have to multiply them, add them, do all kinds of interesting things. I can't do 5 of them even. Right? But kids can do lots of them. Kids can remember up to 20 numbers, in some cases up to 100 numbers in the same sequence. Kids can do 3 parallel calculations as they are, so someone's reading out 3, 5, 7, 2, 8, 6, and the kid is actually multiplying or adding or whatever the addition needs to be done, 3 of them in parallel. Right? We thought this was amazing skills. These skills would really empower a new generation of kids who have much better brain development because they have visualization, they have memory skills, they have concentration skills, and all of these skills which will make them much better. So we came up with our vision we basically wanted kids to be able to calculate faster than a calculator. Right? It's not about number crunching, it's about the ability, it's what the brain can do, and we wanted to prove that you don't have to be born genius to do things like this, because when we spoke to parents, they would say, well, my kid is not a genius, my kid cannot do this, and we would show them, here are kids who are not born genius and they can do things like this. We looked at value hypothesis from a parent's point of view. We spoke to a bunch of parents, a lot of value hypothesis for parents, a lot of student value hypothesis. These are all our hypotheses. These are things that we believe that parents and students and teachers would want, right? So these were all our value hypotheses. We put together growth hypothesis. All the jargons you will hear in the Lean Startup book, right? We did everything, but for fun. But really, what I'm here to talk about is our journey, or basically our hacks. How we went about figuring out what works, what does not work, and don't get me wrong, we're still figuring it out. It's been 2.5 years and we're still figuring it out. But we've had a lot of success in various different things. I'll tell you as we go along. So we started with saying that a lot of kids who are good at these skills learn abacus at a very early age. Abacus is this Japanese thing where it helps you visualize numbers, and then your brain can do pattern matching on top of that. Right? So that's basically what abacus is. So our hypothesis was if we were, the learning of that is very bad. There is about 80% of the kids who drop out from these classes. And if we were to make this electronic, if we were to make this such that it can give people feedback very early, then it would drastically improve the experience, the learning experience. So that was our hypothesis, and we wanted a way to validate that, because building something like this, with a 3D model of abacus, is going to be, an electronic abacus is going to be very expensive. So our first attempt to try and see if there was a way I could give kids feedback that what they moved was wrong, will that help them learn faster? It took 3 weeks for kids to learn how to represent numbers on the abacus when they went to these classes. So what we were measuring is if I came up with a new solution, can I reduce it from 3 weeks to less? Right? So that was our experiment that we wanted to run. So what we did is we basically quickly put together an iPad app, which is basically an abacus, which will help kids represent numbers, and if you represent the wrong number, then it will give you feedback saying, no, that's wrong, right? So that's a little simple iPad, which we wrote it in less than half a day, which will basically give kids a feedback. And what we saw is it took a week for kids to understand how to represent all the numbers. It was 3 weeks earlier. Now it took 1 week. So sure enough, if you give feedback, kids will learn better, right? They will be more engaged. But one challenge was they were not, they needed to be, someone needed to explain where to start, what are the beats, what do they mean, right? Because just looking at this, kids don't understand. So we said, well, what we can do to make that more interesting. So we basically got someone to create a little animation for us, which will explain what the beads are and things like that, and put a little bit storyline so kids can enjoy. So that's
now that everyone is settled down, let's begin by pressing the reset button. It will clear the abacus to the smallest quantity with which you deal in your day-to-day life. Any guesses as to what that number is?
It has to be 14, my birthday.
14.
Dear 14.
Everyone be quiet. Why don't we answer it one by one?
So this was a 30-second little animation that we created. We hired someone to basically create that. We paid a little money, we got the animation done, and then we put this in front of kids. And what we saw is after about watching it for 3 seconds, the kid would zone out. That's like crap, who wants to watch this, right? So very quickly we realized that keeping them engaged is very hard. You cannot show a video and expect them to do this. That we knew to some extent, but we didn't know exactly how long. We thought 30 seconds is okay, kids will watch a 30-second video. But turns out that they don't even want to focus for 30 seconds. So then we came up with another idea, which was basically, what if I give it in the iPad, so as they play, as they watch the video, they can play with the abacus.
It will clear
Right,
the
so
abacus to the
learning and
smallest
they're practicing
quantity with
along
which
the
you deal
side.
in your day-to-day life. Any guesses as to what that...
Anyway, so let the video play, but the point was to have the video play along with something that they can experiment and they can learn through this. right? And what we found was that they were actually now paying more attention to the video, they were following along, and they could stick around for 30 seconds. So this was a good learning for us. We tried it with different kids. We tried to put a little bit of game elements into it and try and add a little game to it and see if kids would actually, all of this is what you're seeing is just something that I built in my, in Keynote or PowerPoint or things like that. And we try and put it in front of kids and see if they would actually, play something like this. And what we found was there was a lot of interest, but it got boring after a while. After doing it for once, kids would get bored. One of the big challenges with what we are trying to do is it requires repetitive practice. If you want to get good at numbers, you have to do repetitive practice. And what we were building was very clear to us that it would not give repetitive practice. So next we said, can we use some things from games like inline instructions, simulations, things like that, that can get kids more interested in what we are doing. So that was kind of our next pivot where we said instead of doing theory classes, let's discard the theory classes, no animation. Let's just give inline instructions like Angry Birds gives or Cut the Rope does. So all these games are very successful and there is no teaching that is required and kids learn by just looking at inline instructions. So can we just do inline instructions and get kids to learn what we want? So we tried, again, we basically experimented it quickly by building it on Keynote in a PowerPoint kind of a thing, and saw if kids can, with inline instructions, if kids could remember how to represent 2. If we showed 2, can they extrapolate and say what will be 1 on the abacus, what will be 3 on the abacus? And sure enough, kids were able to extrapolate and figure out if we showed them one thing, they were able to find out other things. So this was a good little experiment that we figured out that worked well. I'm going to jump ahead. Here we're showing how we can do all together to go faster. And if they already did everything to faster, we don't show the instruction at all. So it's adaptive in the sense that, for kids who don't get it, we show certain instructions. For kids who get it, we skip. So we let them move faster. Right? So these are all things that we were experimenting and we were learning. But one of the things we were trying to figure out is how do we make this viral? How do we make this addictive? How do we make them keep doing this over and over again? Because that's very important. So making it little like a game, adding self-discovery and things like that is not sufficient. You need to do something more. That's when we started doing more of a storyline to give a sense of purpose, what you're trying to do. So we came up with a little story saying, well, a spaceship has crashed, you need to go help the spaceship. Even to figure out the story, we actually did a bunch of experiments where we had 3 different stories and we talked to kids and we saw which one interested them most. We put some cartoon characters, some different characters in front of kids and saw which one they would like more. So we ran a whole bunch of experiments to figure out what stories would stick, what characters would stick with them, and then came up with sketches. These are all just sketches of what we thought would be interesting for the kids. Lots of different sketches of the characters and things like that to experiment. Again, what I'm trying to get at is we were not building any of these things in terms of actually writing code for them, but we were trying to figure out what is sticky for the kids, what will stick with the kids before even we go and build the whole thing out. So a lot of gamification, individual scoring, things that we learned along the way. One still challenge was what can we do to get the kids come and practice every day, right? And then someone came up with the idea that if you had a character and the character would need to be fed because all kids have a pet and you need to feed the pet, right? So if you don't feed the pet, it would starve. So can we do something where they have to feed the pet, and to feed the pet they need to practice and earn points to be able to do that. So we try to experiment that with an idea by going and talking to kids saying, this is your pet, you need to practice this every day, and if you practice you're going to get points and then you can buy some food for your character. And that was something that stuck really well with the kids. And we thought, okay, finally we have cracked this problem of how to get kids to come and practice every day. We ran a bunch of experiments and sure enough the kids were able to continue doing this. We also try to visualize what their learning is all along the way, so they have the positive feedback very early, small positive feedback very early, because some of these skills take 3 months, 6 months before you can see actual results. But we wanted to fake it. We wanted to show kids that they're actually making progress, right? So we kind of started giving some kind of feedback saying, congratulations, you're moving ahead. And all of these were just mock-ups showing the kids as they were practicing, saying, you're getting better, and seeing if that encouraged them to practice more, that encouraged them to try more. Anyway, lots of different things. And after doing all of that, we thought that we have nailed the problem, and now's the time to go and build the whole thing, right? Just hire a bunch of people and just go full speed and build it out. But this is basically what we heard from parents, or we met a bunch of big educational companies, because we were nobody in the education space. So we met a bunch of big educational companies, asking them if they would support our product, if they would sell our product. And the thing that we always heard is, this feels like science fiction. This feels too futuristic. I don't think the market is ready. So we were sitting and thinking, what can we do? Should we give up? Should we wait for a few more years before this feels realistic? What can we do to prove that the market exists? So what we did was, we basically took, we said maybe we can create a video to show the power of something like this. So we put together a little video which would basically show the power of what this can do.
A constant quest to learn and understand the world around them. Stimulating the brain during this period enables the brain to be exceptionally powerful as the child grows. These children perform 4-digit additions and 3-digit multiplications by the time one can pen down the problem.
Anyway, as you can see, we created a little 3-minute video which basically would show the power of what this can do, and then just took dummy screenshots of kids using it, trying to tell parents that this is real, people are using this is not fake, this has helped kids do all of this stuff. We got some kids who were going to these classes and took their things to kind of create a feeling that this is actually real, this is not futuristic. And the other thing we did to prove that actually the market exists is, we took a little small portion of our thing and we put it on the app stores to see how many people would actually download it. We created a little video which was like an introduction, put it on the App Store, got people to use it. When we put it on the Apple App Store, we got about 3,000 downloads in the first week, which was promising but not good enough. That's by the way what the app does. Anyway. But when we put it on the Android App Store, we were surprised because we ranked number 3, I think, worldwide. We hit 120,000 downloads in the first 4 weeks, first 4 days of putting it online. So we saw that this went really viral on the Google Play Store, not so much on the Apple Play Store. And then our hypothesis was, can we use this as a distribution channel without actually having to go through anybody else? Just put little apps out there and see if people would pay. So our next experiment was, we put a $1 paid app on the App Store, and sure enough, nobody bought. Right? Only about 300 people bought that. So very clearly we knew that going through a paid route on the App Store is not an option. We cannot go down that path. And we tested that out. Even though we knew for sure that very few people buy apps, we wanted to see, because we were surprised by the numbers we got here. We thought maybe we will just get lucky. Right? Put it out there and see what people think. Yeah, sure enough, we only had about 300 downloads, which covered the cost of creating the downloads in the first place. But we didn't really make much progress. So at this point we were thinking maybe we should just dump it because it's not going to work, nobody's willing to buy this. Then we started experimenting with the idea of, what if we actually pitch it as a platform instead of a product. We tried to test that out with a few companies. They said no, they're not interested in doing this. I think finally we saw the light when we approached a company and we pitched it as not something that kids will use to replace their training that they provide, but something for kids to go home and practice after the class is being taught. right? So that was what we saw final attraction, and we were able to do a tie-up with the company where we were able to show these fake mock-ups to them, saying this is the value you're going to get out of the product by using our product, and you can use it for practice sessions after kids have attended the class and they go back home, and they can use it for practice. So that's right now our current state is basically where we are trying to help this company with practice sessions. So we started as something that will disrupt those guys. Now we are essentially supporting them because we can't figure out a way to crack the market. But we are hoping that if we get enough traction, we might be able to bounce back and do other things. So anyway, what is the moral of the story? Why did I bore you guys with all these details?
Be agile. Yeah?
Be agile. I think the most important lesson learned for me was what can we do to minimize our investment and figure out how to crack this problem, because this is a hard problem to crack. It is not about building a website for someone. It is about changing a behavior in the end consumer. It is about changing the state of the world in some sense. And that's a hard problem to solve, and we cannot find an easy way. So we need to experiment a lot to figure out what technique will work to crack. So we stuck to our vision. Our vision was always, we believed in our vision and we stuck to our vision. We thought that that's very important and there is nothing we can do to let that go. We need to figure out a way to make that work. We came up with a lot of different strategies, and as you can see, we changed our strategies all along the way. We came up with different strategies. Each strategy was based on a bunch of hypotheses that we assumed that this is what is important to parents, this is what is important to someone else, and we need to solve that problem. So we based it on hypotheses. We ran a bunch of safe-fail experiments, cheap safe-fail experiments. We didn't spend a lot of money. We didn't go to a VC. We were doing this part-time while we were doing other things in life, and basically we were trying to experiment and see what actually sticks, what works. What can we learn from it and attain some validated learning, and then use that validated learning to tweak our strategy. But our vision is still very much the same. We are just tweaking our strategy to figure out how we can achieve our vision with different MVPs. And this actually reminded me of what is referred to as the golden circle, where your focus should really be on the why you're doing something. That corresponds to your vision. And then how you do something corresponds to your strategy, how you achieve things. We build great products, we make people life easy. Those are all things that you do to achieve your vision. And then what is basically how your features or your specific things that you do inside your products that essentially help solve that problem. So to me, the vision rarely changes. You have to pivot, you have to change your strategy, you have to do different things to be able to achieve your vision. And your product is only one small thing that sits on top of it, which keeps changing, which keeps getting refined, which keeps evolving as your strategy changes. So, kind of tying it back to the golden circle, I think that was my key takeaway from all of these experimentation, is that we need to stick with our vision, but figure out ways of connecting with our audience, finding a hack through which we can connect to our audience and actually be able to make a product successful. There are obviously a lot of books written on this topic. A lot of different ideas are there that you can learn from these books. In fact, Bob was here this morning, who was the co-author of Startup Manual. But a lot of interesting material in this, which talks about experimentation, how to try out ideas, and how to go through this at a very cheap cost without actually risking your whole company or your whole product. So that's pretty much what I had for my talk in terms of different techniques that you need to experiment. But keep in mind that the vision you need to keep your vision strong and just keep pivoting around different techniques or strategies to figure out a way to make your vision successful. Time for questions. I'm assuming most people are clapping hands, but thank God it's over. Let's get out. Yeah, go ahead and...
Hello, thank you, Naresh, for your talk. I'm a real believer in all these MVP ideas, but at the same time, I think there is a thin line between MVP and real crap. So how do you define this line? Because sometimes to to validate an idea or to grab this low-hanging fruit, you need to go deeper than just building a small MVP. Do you have some kind of checklist to say like this is a good MVP and this is a really bad MVP?
Okay, so I'll just repeat his question so everyone gets that. His question is that there is a thin line between a good MVP and just some crap that you put out there. And you know, what are some heuristics or checklists or some kind of a parameters on basis of which you can decide that yes, this is a good MVP, or no, you need to go much deeper and understand more before you call this as an MVP. So that's a very good question, and I'm afraid there is no checklist. Right? But I will tell you some heuristics, some thought process that I would use. If you remember, I started with that slide about the big design thinking thing, and then from there we went to the lean startup cycle, the build, measure, learn cycle, where we say we need to identify that one core hypothesis that you want to validate, right? And you need to figure out how can you get an answer to that question that you have. And it could mean building some product, it could mean making a video, it could mean in some cases what I have done is I have taken a dummy box to people. There is nothing, it's just an empty box, and I've gone to people saying, here is a box that will help you save electricity. You just put this box over here and it will sit here and it will tweak your electricity consumption in your house, and this will bring down your electricity by 15% or 20%, right? And see if what the reaction is. One of the things a lot of people talk about is go do user interviews. I think there is a difference between going and asking users what you want and going to users and saying, here is a solution which will solve this problem. Maybe you don't even know this problem exists, but I'm telling you, you have this problem. Make them realize that this problem is there, and then try and see if they resonate. Try and see how they react, and then tweak it. Look at price point. So we will save you 15% of electricity. What is your monthly bill? $100. Okay, 15%. So we are saving you $150. Would you pay $75 for this? Right? So those are, you actually did nothing, but you're trying to understand someone's, what will appeal to someone and what will connect with someone. So that's the heuristics I would use for designing an MVP, is that I have a single most important question, scale it down, figure out if I can answer that one question, good enough. I might run another safe-fail experiment to answer another question. I might do a whole bunch of experiments to figure out, I feel like I've got an understanding. So that's what I would use. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, there is no checklist. Alright, any other questions? 15 minutes to go. Yes, please. Yeah, so very good question again. I love the question. So his question is that what can you do to get your customers interested in your MVP? Because a lot of times customers say, I'm very busy, I don't have time, or I'm already contented with what I have, I'm already happy with what I have, why do I need to try this another MVP? So what do you do to get customers interested in trying out an MVP, right? That's a hard problem, because a lot of times you need to figure out what is their pain point, what troubles them. Because they're not going to try your MVP or your experiment. They don't want to waste their time because there is no direct benefit to them. So one needs to figure out what is their problem. I can talk about an example where I was part of this. This is a company called Greenlight. Greenlight basically builds, their vision was to bring clean light, safe light, solar light to people in rural parts of the world because they don't have electricity, and they use kerosene lamps or petrol lamps or things like that, gas lamps, which are dangerous and expensive. So their idea was to basically give them solar light, which can help them make it much better. And when they went and they tried to experiment with those with the villagers. The villagers said, I don't care. I mean, why are you talking? It's not a problem I have. I don't need your solar light. I don't need any of this stuff. But then they started trying to listen more to what was happening. And one of the problems people had over there was, they had mobile phones and they wanted to charge mobile phones. But they didn't want light, they didn't want any of the product that these guys were building, they were not interested even talking to them. But they had a problem which was charging their mobile phones. So these guys basically said, well, if that's the pain point, maybe we should pivot and we should talk to people based on that. Right? Because they're not interested in light, but can we help them solve the problem of charging their phones? So what I'm trying to get at is they basically looked at what is the pain point for the users and then kind of talk to them, to the target market, and talk to them through that. And sure enough, when they started talking about, how do you charge your phone, they'll start talking to you. I can't charge my phone, it's dying. I need somewhere to charge my phone. Electricity is only there for 1 hour. I need to figure out. And they said, hey, we have a solution. Here is a solar solution which will allow you to charge your phone. By the way, it also gives you light. And guess what happened next? They have sold 1 billion pieces till date. They basically changed their strategy to saying that we're going to charge phones. It's a phone charging device and a side feature which is light. Right? And that clicked, and that they found a way to connect with the users to what the problem was. So that's the hard part, and that's where I think real entrepreneurship comes in, is to figure out what appeals to people. If Henry Ford asked you, do you want, faster, what do you want? You would say, I want faster horses, right? But he said, you need to figure out what is the next leap that maybe customers don't even know and associate with them with some pain point that they can understand, right? One last question and then we are done. I am done. I am going to go out and see Russia. Right. Very good question. Why sticking to your vision you think is very important? Why you should not change? Why should you not pivot your vision itself? Right? Because I think one of the things as entrepreneurs is we see new problems, we want to jump on new problems, and we have a desire to solve a lot of problems, but we don't stay grounded in one vision. And a lot of times, if it was easy, that you could figure out very easily, someone else would have already solved that problem. It's the hard problems that no one else has solved, and it takes time. If you want to build something that is timeless, it takes time. Right? So you need to spend time, you need to focus, you need to figure out how you're going to hack this, how you're going to penetrate the market, how you're going to solve this problem. That is not easy, because if it was easy, someone else would have done it already. Right? So that you don't give up and move on prematurely. A lot of times we discard good ideas prematurely because we can't figure out. Right? So I think that's why it's very important to stick to your vision, at least till a point that you feel that you have tried your best from all different directions before you give up on the idea, right? And if you stay longer, the harder it looks, and if you stay longer, I think the much better solution you're able to come up with. So the impact, if you look at a lot of successful companies, they didn't solve, Twitter didn't come up with Twitter overnight. I mean, they had 2 failed startups before they even came up with Twitter. Right? Name a company and that's how it is. I mean, Facebook didn't start as a social networking site. They started as something else, but their vision stayed the same. They wanted a way to, basically connect people and to be, somehow influencing what people do. They stick to the vision, they change their strategies, and sure enough, today they finally found a way to do that. Still not fair to make money, but they will figure that out. All right.
This is partly connected to this previous question, actually. You have a vision, but the thing is that while you iterate and live and stuff, and your colleagues have alternative visions, how do you actually pick what you actually have to, go with, or just give up the previous one? I mean, how do you pick between the visions? What's the most important thing?
The vision is one thing, right? The vision remains the same. The strategies change. How you're going to solve that problem, the strategies keep changing. But it is also possible, let's say you're two founders, you started off, and one founder still believes that this is the problem that needs to be solved, while the other founder feels this is too hard, let's solve this other problem that we discovered while building this product. This happened in our case, because while we were building, I told you, we were thinking maybe we screw this whole app thing, we'll build a platform, right? Because we can build a platform and solve that problem because nobody else does it. But we said if we can't solve this problem, there's no point solving the app or the platform problem, and let's stick to the app. So it requires a little bit of understanding between the founders, that synergy between the founders to stick to the vision. And I feel if they feel that you need to split ways and go in different directions, you should do that. There is no point stretching it too much. So let's say, for example, I had another co-founder, and the co-founder thinks something else is more important. The original vision is not working out. We should change. And I still believe that the original vision is important to me. I will spend more time and let this person go chase their vision. I think that's important. There's no point keeping this person tied to my vision that I think is important. I have seen a lot of startups where people somehow keep together and somehow try to make it work, and that makes the relationship between the founders pretty solid, right? So if you believe that your visions have changed, then you should change direction. In my opinion, it takes at least 5 years for anyone to get their vision, to see some light to their vision if they're solving some real problem. So 5 years is my horizon, is my benchmark that I use. So, we have 2.5 years, we are only 50% into it. We're going to spend 2.5 more years before we give up on the vision. Alright, I am done. Thank you so much.